The first real chill of autumn had crept through the window frames, and the oversized sweater Alan kept for lazy Sundays was calling to Maya. His side of the closet was a study in organized minimalism: gray, blue, black, each hanger perfectly spaced. She rummaged through the top shelf where it usually lived, but found only neatly folded t-shirts. Frowning, she knelt, pulling open the bottom drawer of his dresser, a rarely visited territory of lone socks and old university sweatshirts. Beneath a faded crew neck, her fingers brushed against something impossibly soft. It wasn't the worn cotton she was expecting, but the cool, liquid slide of silk. Puzzled, she lifted the sweatshirt. Tucked into the far corner of the drawer, nestled like a clutch of fragile eggs, was a small, carefully folded pile of clothing. There was the slip, a whisper of ivory silk. Beside it, a charcoal gray cashmere cardigan with a delicate, feminine ribbing at the cuffs. And underneath that, a simple A-line skirt in a pattern of tiny, muted wildflowers. They were beautiful, tasteful, and utterly foreign to the man she knew. A jolt went through her, but it wasn't a shock. It wasn't anger or confusion. It was the profound click of a key turning in a lock she hadn't known was there. It was a sudden, heart-aching understanding of 100 tiny, previously insignificant moments. The way his eyes sometimes lingered on the drape of a stranger's dress on the street. His subtle fascination with the alchemy of her makeup routine, watching her blend and brush with an observer's intensity. The time he'd picked up a bolt of velvet at the fabric store, his thumbs stroking the pile with a reverence she hadn't understood. He had been holding this secret, polishing it in the dark. The sheer vulnerability of it made her chest tighten. She carefully placed the university sweatshirt back over the small collection, a gesture of respect for a privacy she had unintentionally breached. She closed the drawer with a soft thud and stood up, the forgotten search for a sweater completely erased from her mind. Confrontation felt wrong, a violation. This was his story to tell, in his own time. All she could do was wait and make the area around him safe enough for the words to come. That evening, the space between them was thick with a silence that had nothing to do with comfort. Alan was a ghost in their apartment, his movements strained. He pushed food around his plate at dinner, his gaze fixed on the grain of the wooden table. Maya saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he held his jaw. The drawer was no longer a secret between him and himself. It was an invisible wall rising between the two of them, and he was suffocating behind it. Later, curled on opposite ends of the sofa, the soft glow of a lamp pooling between them, he finally broke. "You were in my drawer today," he said, his voice so quiet it was almost lost to the hum of the city outside. He didn't look at her. His hands were clenched in his lap, his knuckles white. Maya's heart ached for him. She simply nodded, her expression gentle. "I was looking for your gray sweater." A ragged breath escaped him. "Oh." The silence stretched again, taut and painful. She watched him wrestle with a universe of unspoken things. It's not what you think," he finally whispered, the words sounding flimsy and practiced. He shook his head, a gesture of self-annihilation. "Or maybe it is. I don't know." He finally risked a glance at her, his eyes filled with a terrifying, desperate plea. "I've had them for years. I like how they feel. I like how they look. It's like there's a part of me I've kept locked away my whole life. A softer part. A her." The last word was barely audible, a feather of sound offered up for her to catch or crush. He flinched, as if expecting a blow. Maya slowly uncurled her legs and shifted across the sofa cushion until her knee was almost touching his. She didn't offer platitudes or easy reassurances. She didn't say, "I still love you," because that was a given, an unshakable fact that needed no voice. Instead, she let her own years of loving him, of observing the artist beneath the man, inform her response. She saw his fear, his shame, and the deep, trembling hope hidden beneath it all. She reached out and gently covered his clenched hands with her own. His fingers were ice cold. He finally looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Maya met his gaze, her own clear and steady. Her voice was soft, but the words held the weight of a foundation being laid. "How can I help?" The bathroom felt too bright, every surface reflecting a version of himself he wasn't sure he knew anymore. Alan stood before the mirror, his knuckles white against the cool porcelain of the sink. The man looking back was familiar, the same eyes, the same soft line of his jaw, but now a layer of artifice had been stripped away. The confession from the night before echoed in the sterile silence, leaving him feeling exposed. The door creaked open and Maya entered, her arms full. She didn't carry a grand pronouncement, but a simple wicker basket filled with bottles, tubes, and a new pink-handled razor still in its packaging. She set it on the counter with a soft clink. "Okay," she said, her voice a warm, steadying presence in the stark room. "First things first, you can't build a beautiful house on a shaky foundation, so we start with the canvas." Alan watched her line up items: a foaming cleanser, a gentle exfoliating scrub, a bottle of toner. It looked like a chemistry set for a different kind of alchemy. His own routine consisted of a splash of water and whatever bar of soap was on sale. "My face?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "And your legs," Maya added, her smile kind. "If that's okay. It's all part of it, the feeling." He nodded, a tight, jerky motion. He trusted her. He had to. He sat on the edge of the tub as she instructed, the cold tile a shock against his skin. Maya knelt before him, pumping a dollop of shaving cream into her palm. The floral scent of it, so distinctly hers, filled the air. "The secret is warm water first to open up the pores," she explained, her tone like that of a patient art teacher explaining brush strokes. She smoothed the warm, wet washcloth over his calf, and he flinched, not from the heat, but from the sheer, overwhelming tenderness of the act. No one had ever cared for him like this. It was an intimacy that went deeper than sex, more vulnerable than any secret he had ever shared. She showed him how to hold the razor, the angle to use to avoid nicks, the importance of long, steady strokes. Her hand rested lightly on his as he made the first tentative swipe, the blade gliding through the foam, leaving behind a trail of pale, smooth skin. He stared at it, mesmerized. It was his leg, but it was also not. It was something new, something that felt impossibly, terrifyingly correct. They worked in a quiet rhythm, the only sounds the soft scrape of the razor and Maya's gentle instructions. The awkwardness began to melt away, replaced by a strange sense of purpose. He was learning a new language, not of words, but of touch, of care, of becoming. Afterward, as he sat with his legs wrapped in a fluffy towel, Maya handed him a bottle of lotion. "Hydration is everything," she said seriously, a small smile playing on her lips. He worked the lotion into his skin, astonished by the sensation. The smoothness was alien and wonderful. His hands, so used to the rougher texture of his own body, now glided over a surface that felt elegant. He looked at his hands, then at his legs, a disconnect he couldn't yet articulate taking root in his mind. Maya sat on the bath mat beside him, her head tilted. "Does she have a name?" she asked softly, her gaze unwavering. The question hung in the air, fragile as a soap bubble. Alan's heart hammered against his ribs. He had a name, a secret whisper he'd only ever dared to think in the deepest parts of his mind. To say it out loud felt like casting a spell, one that could never be undone. He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. I've thought maybe." He couldn't meet her eyes, focusing instead on a loose thread on the towel. "Allie." The name was a ghost on his lips, barely audible. He waited for a laugh, for a flicker of confusion in her eyes, for anything that would shatter this fragile moment. Instead, Maya's smile widened, lighting up her entire face. "Allie," she repeated, testing the sound. It settled in the air between them, warm and solid. "I love it. It's beautiful." She reached out and placed her hand over his on his knee. "It suits you." He looked up then, and the simple, unconditional acceptance in her eyes was almost too much to bear. A single tear escaped and traced a hot path down his cheek. Maya gently wiped it away with her thumb. "Okay, Allie," she said, "let's finish that skincare." Hearing the name, his name, spoken aloud by the person he loved most was like the first conscious breath after a lifetime of holding it in. It didn't fix the fear or erase the years of hiding, but it laid a new foundation inside him. He wasn't just Alan, a man with a secret. He was Allie, a woman in the process of being born, and he was not alone. The air in the living room was still and warm, tasting of the lavender and chamomile tea Maya had made them. Alan's legs, impossibly smooth from the night before, felt strangely cool against the soft cotton of his sweatpants. He ran a hand over his jaw, the skin still a foreign country to his own touch, and watched as Maya pulled a simple navy blue A-line skirt from her closet. "Okay," she said, her voice gentle but purposeful. "Lesson 2. We're going to learn a new language today, not with words, but with this." She held up the skirt, its fabric a dark, promising whisper. He took it from her, the material lighter than he expected. Changing into it felt like another step across a threshold he'd only just discovered. The fabric settled around his hips, the hem falling just above his knees. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and deeply, profoundly awkward. "Just stand for me," Maya instructed, her tone that of a yoga teacher guiding a novice, "the way you normally would." He obeyed, planting his feet shoulder-width apart, his weight evenly distributed. It was a solid, grounded stance he'd held his entire life without a single thought. "See," Maya gestured, "it's a good stance. It says, I am here, I am stable, but it's not the only way to stand." She moved to his side, her own feet closer together, her weight shifted almost entirely onto her left leg, letting her right hip jut out just slightly. Her shoulders were relaxed, her posture open yet contained. This says something different. It's softer. It's an invitation. He tried to mimic her, pulling his feet in, attempting to shift his weight. His body felt like a block of uncarved wood. He wobbled, his hips stiff and uncooperative. A hot flush of embarrassment crept up his neck. "I feel like I'm about to fall over." "That's because you're thinking about it," Maya said with a soft laugh. "You've spent 26 years learning one alphabet. This is just a new one. Try again. Don't think. Just flow into it." They moved on to sitting. Maya placed a dining chair in the middle of the room. "The eternal challenge," she announced with mock solemnity. "How to sit in a skirt." She demonstrated, a smooth, single motion of bending her knees and sinking onto the chair, one hand brushing the fabric down behind her thighs. She crossed her legs at the ankle, a picture of effortless grace. Alan's turn. He approached the chair, his mind a frantic checklist of her movements. He bent his knees, but forgot to account for the skirt, and sat with a familiar, unthinking thud he always had. The navy fabric poofed up around his waist in a brief, comical display. He froze, mortified. But Maya wasn't mocking him. She was smiling, a genuine, crinkle-eyed smile that held nothing but affection. "I did that in my communion dress," she said. "My aunt took a picture. It's legendary. The key is to think of your knees as being best friends who never want to be separated." Her laughter was a key, unlocking the tension in his chest. He laughed too, a short, breathy sound of relief. He tried again, this time remembering to keep his knees together, his movements still clumsy but less jarring. The skirt stayed put. It was a small, ridiculous victory that felt monumental. The final lesson was walking. Maya cleared a path from the living room to the kitchen. "Forget heels for now. We're starting with the foundation." She kicked off her slippers. "Walk towards me." He did, his gait clipped and functional. "Okay, that's Alan's walk," she said, nodding. "It gets the job done. Now let's find Allie's." She had him imagine a straight line on the floor. Place one foot directly in front of the other, heel to toe. Let your hips do some of the work. They're not just for carrying your legs around. He tried. The first few steps felt like a parody. He was stiff, over-exaggerating the sway of his hips, feeling like a cheap imitation he'd seen in a bad comedy. Frustration prickled at him. This was impossible. He wasn't a dancer. He was a graphic designer who sat at a desk all day. His body was a collection of straight lines and sharp angles, not the soft curves and fluid motion he saw in Maya. "I can't do this," he mumbled, stopping in the middle of the rug. I look stupid." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of all his fear. I'm just a man playing dress-up. Maya didn't rush to correct him. She simply walked over and stood before him, taking his hands. You don't look stupid. You look like someone learning. Did you speak perfect English the first time you tried? Did you draw a masterpiece the first time you picked up a pencil? Your body has been speaking one language its whole life, Alan. We're just teaching it a new one. Be patient with it. She squeezed his hands. Be patient with her. Her words settled him. He took a deep breath. He let it out slowly, letting go of the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. He let go of the need to get it perfect. He just walked, one foot in front of the other. He didn't think about his hips or his shoulders. He just thought about moving across the room toward the woman he loved. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a supermodel's strut, but something had shifted. The movement was less stilted, more connected. As he passed the darkened television screen, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a silhouette. It wasn't his own familiar, blocky reflection. It was a figure with a softer line, a gentler motion. A stranger he was just beginning to recognize. He reached Maya, a strange lightness in his chest. He felt tired, but it was the pleasant ache of a muscle used for the first time, not the exhaustion of defeat. He hadn't mastered it, not even close. But for a few brief, miraculous seconds, he hadn't been an actor performing a part. He had simply been moving. He had been speaking. And for the first time, in a language without words, he had started to feel like Allie.
Don't stop now. See what happens next. Subscribe for more every week. Hit the bell and stay part of the story.